Welcome to the Business Vitality Podcast. My name is Cantey. I am the host and an executive coach. I work with teams, individuals, and leaders to help create a measured leadership change. We do that using practical applications, and our clients are creating 100% measured results as seen by those around them. Not necessarily what I think or what they think, but what the other people are seeing. And they are being recognized for the hard work that they're doing. If you're interested in learning more about some of the work that we're doing, you can learn more at catherinecantey.com. I would love for you to subscribe to this show, to Business Vitality. This is my way to continue to pay it forward and share business best practices. Stay tuned and listen to the interview. Thanks for being here. Bryant Kaminaga, you are an executive with experience in strategy and delivery, driving global growth, scale, efficiency, and transformational success. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. I had the best time getting to talk with you the other day. I loved your stories. They brought some humor into my life. Not every corporate story is humorous, and your stories were pretty funny and entertaining, but yet educational. And I think sometimes we just need to have a little bit of fun with what we're doing and learning. And I think one of them that stood out was take somebody to work day. And you shared that story with me. Can we just start with that? Because that was.
Yeah. No, so I don't know if there's any good life lessons in this particular story, but
it's fun.
Yeah, no, the background was I had moved from, banking, financial services, so Visa, then Schwab. And I got recruited into Google, and you all have heard about that little tiny company that exists. And Google, of course, is a very young company. And what they have there, instead of a bring your child to work day, they have bring your parents to work day. And I thought it was a joke, right? But when I got there, it literally was all of your coworkers bringing their parents to tour the campus. And they had little fun games for them, like kids, of course. They had more adult drinks that were available rather than the kid apple juices. But I got stopped more than once by a couple of other parents that asked me who my child was, and I was, no, I actually work here. I work with your child, and they're great.
I think it's awesome.
Right now, one in Rome.
I know. No, I mean, think about it. Like, I know for me in the beginning of my career, I worked so hard to look more of that senior role, and now the day's here, and I'm kind of like, oh my God, let's back it up a little bit. Let's not look too senior and fit in. So it's just weird how the days just continue to go, and I don't know. It's a way, if we still had that, if I could have the knowledge of today but still have that back then, that would be pretty awesome. But that's not the way the world works all the time. So
that's how we learn wisdom.
I know. Yeah, good wisdom. I love it. I think it was kind of fun. So before we hit record, I shared a kind of a statement in regards to people that are growing their careers. They're starting out, and then they want to grow into that executive position. Sometimes they're sales-driven individuals, and the salespeople are really good at business development or making things happen outside the company. Then they get that promotion that they've been dying for, and now they're inside the business. They're not out on the road developing business. And I think they have a sales mindset, but they somehow don't realize the importance of relationships inside the organization. And I just said, I think sales are more of an inside. Sales is inside and outside, and you kind of had a different spin, or maybe similar but a little bit different. I'd love to hear, if you can, just discuss some of that, because I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think. So I think you have to take a step back and think about individualized career sets. And I think, I don't know the real statistic, but I'd imagine like 99% of the time, no career is very linear, right? I mean, you may set out early in your career, have a blueprint of I'm going to be X, Y, and Z and certain titles, and you may be chasing that titles, but as you progress, you'll find opportunities that pop up randomly. And those opportunities often come up through relationships that you've made. You've had the opportunity to work with a leader or a sponsor of some sort, or a mentor or promoter that has seen your value and has seen how you've been able to perform and says, hey, I think you'd be great for this problem that I now have. And it comes with a promotion and new capabilities, new responsibilities, and the like. And you take a step back and you think about sales. Sales is not that much different. I mean, yes, there's quotas and there's hunting and everything, but the core components of sales, you're selling a product and or service, right? And that product and service is selling a solution to someone who has a problem that they're looking for something to buy because they need it. And they may end up choosing your product surely on the specs of that, but what usually closes the deal and what makes this great salesperson great is their capabilities to build that relationship and tie and have them see that vision, right? Of here is the solution that I can provide to you, and here's how your life would be therefore better. And it's not that much different than in internal careers. It's the same skill set that you've done to succeed in business that you can use to succeed internally if you're talking about sort of a large sort of corporation net. And it's usually upon that backs of that network and that relationship that you have built on that's core to sales as is core to your career growth.
Why do you think it's a hard time to pivot from servicing outside to servicing inside if they're transitioning from what I would call outside sales into more of an executive role or manager role inside? What do you think that resistance is, or how do we overcome it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not everyone is the same, I'd say. In my travels, so as my experiences of one, so I'll be upfront about that. But I did ask and have had relationships with a couple of AEs, both at sort of Visa and at Google, and I saw some of them went from field sales into more internal, and for some of them the transition was relatively hard. And in those conversations, what I saw more often the time was sort of self confidence. So whereas when they're in the field, they're selling a product or service that they felt confident because they could see other customers succeeding well. When you're internal and promoting, the product is yourself, right? And so there's a bit of, am I confident in myself to sell myself to someone else to then promote my career? Now, some people may fake it till you make it, but I found a lot of salespeople to be relatively humble, right? They're very honest. They don't like pushing lies, and it's sort of that core self component part that they struggle a little bit with, and so sometimes they just need a little bit more of encouragement. Well, no, you're actually pretty awesome. Here's what you've done. Take a step back. Let's look at the metrics. Salespeople love metrics. Let's look at what you've delivered. This is on you. This is not some magical product that's sold on its own. It was you and your relationships and your hustle and your engagement. How can you? I mean, that value is transferable to what you now have to do, even when you're internal, because now you have to teach a fleet of people, or now you have to guide the sales ship in the right direction. And you have to leverage that knowledge that you've had to move us forward. And you're the right person for the job. It's usually that level of encouragement and mentorship that they often lack, I think, at least in my travels. I'm sure there's other reasons.
I think that's interesting because the clients that I'm working with in regards to coaching, they're high performing individuals, and they're second guessing themselves when they're in these positions. But yet when they leave the organization, they go outside, they can go sell and close all day long. And they're just struggling, pivoting back internally to navigate. And what you're saying is, look, your customer outside has a problem that you can solve. Your customer inside, your collaborators, your team members that you're working with, they have a problem that you can solve. But there is that resistance of them being able to share that they can solve the inside problem because they think it is some form of arrogance, or they're coming across as I don't think the right word is too much. They're just they don't want to brag on themselves.
Yeah.
Is what they're telling me. And I'm like, but if you had somebody on your team who was doing what you needed them to do and they had good news to share with you because something got delivered on time or met expectations or exceeded, wouldn't you want to know? And they're like, well, yeah, probably. I'm like, then what's holding you back from being able to share what's going on? And they're like, that's just not the way I do it. Like, that's just out of my comfort house. I don't feel good about it.
I imagine it's probably kind of similar to, introverts versus extroverts, and just sort of putting yourself out there, even from a sort of networking perspective. again, I think for like the greatest of salespeople, I find a lot of them tend to be introverts for the odd element of it. They're great and relatively humble internally, right, of their own capabilities because they're not selling themselves; they're selling their product or service. And it's when you're internal, again, it's sort of the flip. Do you feel confident in your capabilities to solve this problem? And I think I've coached a few of them, and some of the best advice that I've given them, at least that's what they told me, is that in business and in life, no problem is exactly the same. So if someone has a challenge, they're not going to look for someone who's exactly done it before because they don't exist. What they're looking for is someone who's creative, who's hardworking, who's who's innovative, and can find the solution set. And those are all sort of the capabilities that I find like field salespeople to be, because they have to hustle. They have to understand deeply what their customer is looking for, what their problem is, and how does my product and service fit into it. Can I creatively find the solution that brings you value? Not brings me money, but brings you the value that you're seeking. And that's no different than internal. Should you have confidence in yourself to solve a problem? I think the short answer is yes. Can you solve this exact problem? Not now, but over time, absolutely. Once you have a little bit more information, dive into it, dig into it, and get sort of passionate about it. And I think it's that sort of breakdown of the problem and the challenge when people see it. And then they get some more self-confidence, and they can make that transition a little easier.
I have a couple questions as we talk about this. One is about building sponsors. Let me go with that one for a minute. So I find this interesting. I've got a group of high performers doing fantastic. The company's growing at a very accelerated rate. They want to have a very concentrated event, and I've done this in the past for them. I thought it was interesting. I gave them a pre-survey to talk about what topics they want to talk about. And they want to talk about how to get more done in the same amount of time. But they didn't want to talk about the importance of sponsorship. They were like, I'm good with that. I don't need any sponsors. I just need to figure out how to work faster myself. What are your thoughts? I just thought that was very ironic, but I want to know what you think.
What was the makeup of this group? Was it all the same level, or was it just the entire company?
It's same company. It's a group of women. So you have that theme. And I know what the research shows with men, doing a great job at building sponsorships within an organization to continue to grow and find opportunities. So it was women, very high performers, and just to continue to grow and stretch them to the next level. And I thought the irony was they just want to know how to do more with less, but maybe not have the need of learning how to leverage sponsorships. And you've talked about relationships even at the beginning of this call and how important it is. And I thought, if they're listening, what do they need to hear right now?
All kinds of thoughts pop in my head from what you just talked about. Maybe I take a step back. I think maybe they're a little bit more short-term focused than long-term. If the focus of the conversation is more career growth, a long-term perspective, then it's a bit shocking they're not looking at sponsorship. If I take a step back in my career and the career of my colleagues, I have never known any one of them that has not been promoted because of a sponsor. And whether that's your direct line manager, or whether that's like executive that saw something in you and saw personally to your development. And I mean, not just going to bat for you, because every company may do it slightly differently, but every company has kind of a similar process of, we are willing to promote this individual. Who's willing to speak for that individual? And can you give me a sense of why you think they're ready? And there's often a debate that happens, right? And yes, there's like nuances and process changes that might go from company A, company B, tech versus healthcare versus retail. It's all kind of the same. And the constant in that is that there is a sponsor for you to help promote you. But not only that, not only sort of a linear version, but it's also, you may have sponsors elsewhere in the company that may think you're better fit for another role and another challenge, and may say, I worked with you in the past. I think you're awesome. I'd love you to come to my group. to a higher title, higher level of pay, etc. If this is something people can do. I have never known that to happen personally without some level of sponsorship. And that sponsorship is usually done on a backs of a relationship. Whether that relationship is working with someone in a direct line project or through some sort of mentorship or through some sort of networking event, that's the key. Without that, I'd imagine it doesn't happen, or the likelihood and probability of that is incredibly low. I can see the allure of wanting to do more with less, because there's often this mentality of, if I'm a great performer, people will see it and good things will come afterwards. And yes, that's true. I mean, you want to walk the walk, right, so to speak. But I'll tell you this, if you did great and awesome, but nobody knows your name, or no one's willing to put you forward for a promotion, will you ever get there? I imagine the answer is no. As great as you will, you'll probably end up having great performance reviews and maybe a nice bonus. But I don't necessarily know if that's going to get you to the next level, the next title. And I'd also take a step back and say, I mean, I guess for the nature of your conversations with this group of high performing individuals, there often comes a time in your sort of career when you start thinking about, well, where do I really want to go? Like when you're young, you're like, oh, I want to be CEO of something, or CMO of something else, or head CRO or some sort of chief level. But as you move and progress in life, your balance in terms of your interest and your passion and what you want to be and what you enjoy and what brings more value to yourself, that introspection, I think, is very, very important, because you may end up be chasing a title and may find yourself unhappy there, or you may find yourself producing a lot of work and feeling some value for that, but not being passionate about it, and not being interested in it, just sort of doing it in the motion of the work level. Those are my sort of initial sort of reactions. The third reaction, of course, is if you go down deep into the topic of how do I get more done with less. Two initial thoughts come to mind. Is one, have you prioritized well? Of course, you shouldn't be the one to try to do everything, because not everything has the same level of value to the time and effort put into it. But then also there's some level of diminishing returns, right? Not everything needs to be perfect. I'm not saying do your job poorly. It's just saying, how much time do you want to spend on, say, a document looking nice and pretty versus the content in that document and the message it's trying to convey. That's sort of the paradigm of what level of effort should you put in, and that draws the most value, that you eventually get more, not necessarily more work done, but more valuable work done for a time place. But I mean, those are the initial sort of random thoughts based on your story.
No, I think that's fantastic. Do you think that there is, when it comes to building these relationships for individuals, have you found that it's more effective to have some sort of structured program in place? Or is it better for someone to say, hey, Bryant, will you be a sponsor for me? Or do you think it's just more of a casual conversation with me just periodically checking in with you and sharing what I'm working on, more organic? So structured versus me calling it out, saying, hey, will you be a sponsor for me? Or the third option, which is me just following up as I'm kind of working with you. You're giving me some ideas. I'm going to meet with some people, and it's more organic. What are your thoughts on that? Is there one that's more effective that you've seen?
So I think they all can be effective. I think it depends on the nature of the individual. And I think it's more of a recognition that every individual has differences and certain apprehensions of getting engaged to that level. Like, not everyone's going to want to come up to an exec and say, will you be my sponsor? Basically out of fear of sort of rejection, like, who are you and what are you doing here? And why are you asking me? I can think of 3 stories that when I was at Visa, because we were trying to think about how do we develop sort of the next level of talent. And we tried 3 different things, and they were all successful to their own right, but it was with a different group of people. So the first element we tried to do was create a mentorship program where we randomly selected people that wanted to volunteer, like, I want to put my name in the hat based on certain levels, and executives across multi-functions, got paired up randomly to some level of personality tests, of course, that existed. And we gave them some like a light structure of here's generally the kind of questions you ask each other in the first rounds, but after that, take your relationships off and go. And it was an opportunity for people to network and get introduced to some leaders, as well as leaders getting introduced to talent that they would never in their course of business have been able to do. And it opened some of the doors for a lot of people that were very introverted and had no avenues to do that. And so some of them had great successes. Many of them moved different departments, which I mean, even out of my group, which I don't see as a failure because I lost some great talent, I saw as a success because they moved on and their careers continued to flourish and grow, and they stayed within the company and paid back dividends to us. The second thing we tried was a career pathing exercise across support. That was like 4,000 people. And we tried to create these linear, like, here's what your career path looks like if you stay in this department or this department or that department. And unfortunately, we found like 90% of the time people didn't follow those pathways. They eventually moved in different groups and different directions, but there were 10% of the people, often at the lower level, that found it helpful to understand what a career might look like and what some of the skill sets they need to grow as they moved up on certain levels. And it quantified certain elements of our performance reviews, as well as hurdles on how we would get to a point of saying you're ready for the next level. Have you hit certain thresholds of performance or quantitative metrics that we would define as part of this career pathing? That was helpful in that regard, but it was a different class of people that found it successful and helped them. And then the third thing we tried was we did bench strength things. So it's a fairly classic example of senior leaders selecting one individual from their team that we would rotate and get this chance to see different departments. And the concept there is that if most careers are not linear, and most talent is also not linear and not in depth, then the value is often driven by being able to experience the stakeholders around you. What are their issues that they're seeing? So that when they hit to that leadership level, they have a better appreciation and can find better solution sets, right? As well as integrate well within those teams. And we found that to be the case. It was like a massive success. Those individuals had a faster time to hitting the next level. They may or may not be within our function. If I recall, there were like 20 or so people that we did this bench strengthening exercise. And it solved the secondary problem for us, which was succession planning. Everyone else succession planning easy. We're just going to pick one from this group of people that has already seen different things and has already had a chance to lead and have global exposure and experience and knows the business full in and out. So again, it was three things that we tried. We recognized that there was no silver bullet. I'm sure there's other things we could have tried, and I'm sure they're still innovating since I've left that company. I think they started up like a university program internally to continue on sort of education and give people more skill sets as the job market, as jobs have shifted and careers have shifted. But those are the sort of the things that comes to mind.
I love the last one that you talked about. We're doing this with one of these companies that I'm working with because they do want to build bench strength, and they don't know who's going to rise until you kind of throw them in there, and you want them to have these different experiences. And I remember when I started in banking 20 some odd years ago, there wasn't really a formal onboarding process. They just left me in an operations center and said, figure out what we can go sell. And I loved my manager at the time, but he went to Paris for 3 weeks and said, when I get back, if you can go ahead and have everything documented, that'd be great. And there's about 150 people out there, and we just need to figure out what they can do so then we can go out and we can sell it. And by the way, find out how much it cost, like how many hours and people and all this stuff. I was like, okay. So I did, and I interviewed all these people in our operations center, started with all the managers, and it was physically exhausting sitting in a chair, because this is old school, sitting in a chair, listening to what their job was and asking questions so I could understand, I could take the acronym out of whatever it is that they were saying, and I could figure out how to digest it into words that the customer might understand. But then I had to describe it in a way that sounded valuable to the customer. And then I had to come back and say, I think we could do XYZ. Can you do that? And then they would come back and say, yeah, I can't do that because they weren't prioritizing. But then once I figured out that they needed, let's say, a half of an FTE to do this service that was going to make us a bunch of money because the customers didn't want to do that work anymore. They were like, all day long, we can do this for you. Yeah, if you're gonna get me not only a half of a full-time employee, but a full-time employee back here to just do those reports every couple weeks, yeah, we could do that all day. And so it was like bridging these communications between all these people, but I would never have known to go talk to Luann back in research to figure out what she was doing, to figure out what the customers were doing that were taking up her time so I could go listen to the customer talk about what their pain points were and be able to bridge the gap and figure out what the value to the customer was and figure out how many, because they always say, no, we can't do that in the operations. And that was fine. But I said, well, how many hours does it take? And like breaking down these conversational pieces. How many hours? Oh, I don't know. Could be 2 hours a week. I don't have any more time. I'm like 2 hours a week. They're going to pay me $1,500. I think I can find somebody to cover that for 2 hours a week. So we started doing this, and there's opportunity there, which is pretty cool. But it all starts with what you were talking about is the bench strengthening exercise, which is get these high performing people exposed to other areas of the business, because then when they have that bigger global concept, they can begin to close the gaps and begin to find new opportunities. It's going to continue to get this business to remain vital and growing.
Well, I mean, I love your story, and my head goes to things that we would often say during, promotion reviews, which was, have we pushed them? Because the trigger point in your story was that executive saying, I have this big problem. I trust you. I know you've done it before. I'm going to push you to the ledge and see if you're going to do it. See if you're going to freak out, see if you're going to get it done. And you rose to the occasion and got it done. And not only that, but you flourished and you had passion and you had fun about it. And you enjoyed doing it, sounded like. And I think it's that piece that leaders are taking the step where they're investing, in the right, in talent like yourself, right, as sort of an example. I think sort of the interesting byproduct of our bench strength was that our attrition rates for those people after a few years was 0. Like, they stayed on board because they felt like the company was investing in them and their career, and they had a chance to do a bunch of fun stuff that they never thought they would be able to do. And it promoted the brand loyalty value with them internally that we saw, that they ended up being great leaders, right, for us. And it's, it comes back to the earlier point that we're talking about, which is it's all those relationships that they had a relationship with us and we with them, and them with the company that had longevity. And you start thinking of your employees almost like your customers. It's like a lifetime value that they stay with you, that enriches the group and the your products and services you're trying to do.
All right, so I like this conversation because it triggers other conversations that I'm hearing. One of them, you hear in the marketplace that the turnover is high, nobody's loyal, but then yet you say, if we invest in our employees with this, let's just say bench strengthening exercise, the attrition isn't there. Like they're staying, they feel invested, they're engaged. It makes me wonder, okay, so let's say we've got these executives that have been in place for a while, and they're used to doing, leading. But then you've got this next layer of talent that's coming up, and it's almost, there could be a little bit of a collision because the executives may be used to doing a lot of it, but yet they've grown their people, but they still haven't fully released to that next level. That's it's like they're bumping up against each other. Do you have any advice or thoughts, or have you seen that happen before, or that was just a one-time fluke that I saw, that you've got high potential people wanting to take on more, but the struggle of the executives kind of letting it go?
Yes, my head goes to a bunch of different experiences and scenarios. I think maybe at a top level, I would
So
say
it's
yes.
happened more than once?
Well, my career's been a journey, right? And across the journey, fundamental principle that I have is, if you take the time to invest in your people, their loyalty factor will increase as well as their output. I mean, that's the fundamental principle that I have in my mind. And I've seen it in large global organizations where, I ran teams of hundreds. And I've seen it at the finite levels, I've seen it at senior levels, and I've seen it at lower levels. And no individual is the same. And over time, their preferences will also change of what they have value and interest in doing, of course. But I do recall one scenario where I had a direct report to me. She could not get higher until I effectively left. And I was planning on staying for a little while. So she had reached the apex of a career with my group. And I could tell that she was getting somewhat frustrated and looking for, how do I get that next level? I'm looking to get to a vice president level. And she was one of my top performers, to be honest. My view, though, was I'm not going to try to keep her here, because that would just over time degrade her performance and degrade her morale, and also the rest of the team. And plus, she had done so much that I owed it to her as a manager to try to figure out, how do I help her career? Because that's what managers, frankly, should do, right? You're helping them out, they should help you out, and they should be part of your stepping stone in your career of where you want to go. And so what I did was I talked with other executives saying, do you have another position, or would you like to get introduced to my top performer? She's amazing. And she ended up moving into a different subsidiary within our company. So still part of the larger organization, different function. And she moved up and became the same title as I was through that introduction, through that promotion that I did, again, as an advocate for her in the company. Again, you don't get promoted without another sort of advocate and a promoter within the organization. And she impressed them, and she's been doing fantastic. I still keep in touch with her every sort of once in a while, and she's continued to flourish and grow in her career. And I think that step made her want to be a lifer with the company. It's like, these are great people, great leaders. I'm continuing to expand and grow and be part of this organization and company, and I'm happy. And I have other examples where people just needed to move to a different department because they weren't not necessarily passionate about a title per se. They were just passionate about doing a certain kind of work. And how do they get to that certain kind of work? Because they found that more interesting. And a lot of that type of stuff doesn't come up unless you have one-on-one conversations and have honest transparency. The employee needs to feel comfortable saying these things, like, may not want to be with you longer term, and I have absolutely no expectation that they would. And so once you get over that hump, it's, where would you like to go, and how do I get you there? You've been fantastic. You've helped me and my team, and you've contributed so much. How can I contribute back to you? And I think once you have those conversations, you can find those pathways to make them and help them grow.
I feel like there's this transition in life that happens where we want these promotions and we want to continue to follow this career path. But then the day comes and we're kind of like, why am I doing this? Like, this isn't aligning with my life, maybe focus or goals or whatever it is that I'm doing. How do you, and I guess it all hits us at different times, but we want to continue to excel and hit the next mark and the next mark and the next mark. And I work with a lot of people who want to get promotions and they're like, why haven't I gotten promoted yet? I'm like, I don't know, maybe you just need to have, what is like the root cause of this? I need the next promotion and I need it in the next 6 months. Like, what is it really going to solve whatever this burning desire is inside of you? Or is it just out of pure habit that you're used to getting the next promotion? Do you think there's just like a time in life when we begin to think about, all I want is that next promotion versus, is this aligning with what I want for my life versus just for in the moment in the career?
Yes, I would say there's the one truth that I've come across in my life where no job will ever be 100% perfect and you'll be always happy about it. There's always going to be elements of it that you don't like, and you'll oftentimes feel inundated by it. That's probably why they call it work and not fun. Mm-hmm. To answer your question, earlier in my career, I was always about trying to get to the next level. might have been in the environment that I was in. I started off in consulting. In consulting, it was if you don't get promoted the next year, you're actually fired. So it was this up or out mentality that existed, and that wore me down pretty quick. So after like 5 or 6 years, I got so tired after working like 80 hours a week and on the road 90% of the time that I realized I placed a different value on a different type of work, and I wanted a different career and change. And once I had clarity of that, I began making progress towards that new goal. I think it's to your question. Yes, I'd imagine people may be chasing certain things depending upon where they are in life or where they think that they need to go. Some people are very specifically driven of I need to get to this blueprint level of X, and that's the only myopic pathway that they see, and they want to get there, and that's fine. It's not necessarily good, bad, or wrong. It's just it's their way. But I would maybe say you may be chasing that goal and at the behest of not seeing other opportunities around you. And when you're doing that, envision yourself there. Are you 100% happy, and what's making you happy? And get down to the fundamental of if the answer is yes, I found some element of my vision of that new title and that's going to make me happy and proud, then great. But if it's not, because I think you'll probably struggle, ask yourself the questions of what really makes me passionate about what I want to do. We spend a lot of time working in life, more time than with family, more time with than any other sort of pastime. And people just want to make sure that there's some level of meaning, I think, and an interest level of doing what they want to do. They want to feel stuck. They want to continue to feel like there's options and growth, I think, fundamentally. But just think about what is it about your goal that makes you interested and happy about it, besides the money.
That helps. Paychecks help.
Yeah.
You said a word that hits home with me, which is clarity. You found some clarity so you knew how to drive forward. How does one begin to find that clarity? Or what worked for you?
So there are many times in my career that I've made career changes and moves. I moved different departments. I went from a finance role to an operations role. I changed companies a couple of times. I went from support to sales to product, and strategy. So I did bounce around a bit. My resume probably looks horrible as a result of it.
That's called bench strengthening. You bench strengthened your resume. That's the way I look at it.
They were all big decisions, and I think the way that I got there was a couple of ways. One is I thought about it logically, pros and cons. I'm a very analytical person that way. I thought about the opportunity sets afterwards. Like if I do this move in this job, what's next afterwards, and what are my options there? And do they seem interesting to me? And then I talked to a lot of people. I talked to my mentors. I talked to my boss wife, who's the boss of the home. But you ask your partner or your loved ones and get their opinions. And then you formulate from you, is this a work that I would like to do over what sort of time frame? What do I think I'd learn? What do I think I'd be able to do? Who do I get to work with? And is that interests me at all versus what I have now in my pathway? And if, again, I'm sort of analytical, if those equations match up, then I made the move. And I felt it's sort of like then you buy a new car syndrome. As soon as you make the leap, you sort of instantly regret it. And then you take a step back and realize, well, no, I've actually done the thought process and I still come up with the right decision and the same decision. I still feel confident in my decision. I'm going to make the most of it and move forward that way. That's the way that I do it. I think other people may go on sort of gut feel or may get pressurized into certain things. But that'd be my advice, is just logically think through it. So that way, when you do regret it, if you make the move, then at least you feel confident in that decision later.
I think that it sounds like it would reduce the anxiety, because of course we'll have anxiety when we make the change, but the process or the framework that you go through helps validate that anxiety can settle because
Yep.
you've done the math, you had the conversations. I like it. That's cool. All right. So as we begin to wrap up, are there any other helpful tips or or any practical applications that you have found in your career that that could be useful to the high performers that are listening right now, or even the executives that are continuing to meet and exceed company expectations, because gosh knows they have quarterly goals that they're still out there just crunching to hit. Do you have any words of advice for them or for that team that they're building and pouring into to support those efforts?
Oh, wow. I think for the executive and senior leaders, never lose sight of your people, and think of them long term. Don't think of them as sort of turnaround. We're unfortunately seeing a lot of things like layoffs and cutbacks that have occurred, that have impacted the morale of the companies. That I've really seen that they've built fantastic products. Those products and services are built by people, and people that are creative and engaged with your companies. And so don't lose sight of that is the only thing I could say. For the people starting off in their career and are very, very hungry, I'd continue to say go at it. Don't have a linear view. Opportunities will pop up and explore them, I would say. And the hardest transition I've seen for the most talented people has been from individual contributor to manager. And it's worthwhile saying this because it's advice that I end up giving to a lot of people when they make that transition, is that the shift for them is one where the spotlight is no longer on them, and the spotlight is on their team. And they feel very insecure about it as a result, because they're not getting any praise or accolades anymore. And they start feeling like, am I doing a bad job? Am I not performing? Am I suddenly went from this excellent, everyone's talking about me, to no one's talking to me at all? And I feel like I'm going to get fired soon. And that's not the case. It's your success is based on your team's success. So if your team ends up succeeding, you've actually done a fantastic job. And that's what we need you to do. And that's that elevation and growth piece that I've seen a lot of talented individual contributors just fail, unfortunately. It's not because they can't build relationships. It's just they don't have the focused mindset. Unfortunately, their focused mindset is still internally, because they feel like there's this gap all of a sudden, and so they have to be more giver versus sort of receiver. And that's the only advice I can say, because they'll hit them. Talented people will get there and get there quickly, and that's the hardest transition for them when they make it. But that's the only advice I can possibly give at this moment.
I think it is fantastic advice. I'm going to put this on some sort of loop and just keep playing it into a few people's heads that I talk to. Bryant, if somebody wants to learn more about you and your bench strengthening exercise that you've done on your own career and want to keep learning from you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, please reach me out. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way. I have my personal information on there. You can reach out to me. I welcome new contacts. I have a fairly unique last name, so I'm pretty sure you can easily find me. All of the Kaminagas in the world are kind of related. So hit me up there. Email me. Feel free to call. I'm happy to make new connections.
Fantastic. Bryant Kaminaga, you are an executive with experience in strategy and delivery, driving global growth, scale, efficiency, and transformational success. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If you like it, please subscribe, share this episode or this show with other people around you. The greatest form of a compliment is a referral. I really appreciate them. And if you think that you want to learn more about some of the work we're doing, I encourage you to reach out to CatherineCantey.com. You can schedule a call or just continue to read articles and information that we post out there. Thank you so much for being here.